Good afternoon. My name is Jean Nicolas Paquet Rouleau. I'm the head of regional delegation of the ICRC for Southern Africa.
Let's talk about this important 24th regional seminar on the implementation of international humanitarian law and the significance thereof. It focuses on galvanizing political commitment to international humanitarian law.
Absolutely. It's just 6 weeks that I'm in the country, and this is the first big seminar that I get the chance to participate, and it's extremely meaningful because this is the 24th one, which means that this is a long-standing tradition that we have with DIRCO, where we organize, we convene states, African states from the region, but also observers from as far as Ethiopia and Burkina Faso, to attend 1 week, during which we will be discussing on challenges related to international humanitarian law, and at this specific moment in time, when there are 51 conflicts raging on the continent, when there are more than 45 million people that have been uprooted by conflict and war on the continent, the importance of ensuring that international humanitarian law isn't just a body of laws that exists out there in some closet, but that it has also the political buy-in of all states, African states, leaders, that this is something that needs to be upheld because the consequences of conflict are too difficult for the populations that endure it. And so having the chance of all those African states today here, for the week, here, present with us, discussing how they can use practices, surface knowledge that exists on this continent and that has existed for decades, if not hundreds of years, and to galvanize that and bring this back to their leaders at the political level is fundamental.
Let's talk about the role of South Africa and the regional leadership on this. And this is quite huge now. You know, the Indian Ocean is here, Southern Africa is here.
Absolutely. If we talk about Southern Africa, we talk about a compendium of states that have had troubled history, that have had difficult past, that have endured conflicts, some for decades, and which today are in stability, which today are leaders in terms of what principled and what international rules-based order means. And I'm taking the case here of South Africa particularly, who stand up for a world where rules are important and need to be respected.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about what is the galvanizing international leaders also seeks to achieve. And these commitments are quite important. Then what is the end goal?
So it's a 2-year process. This year is mostly to get states, all states, and we're talking about all continents, to join in as many number as possible. To date, we have 96, 97 countries. In Africa, there's 17 countries out of 54, so there's still a need for more African states to join, but we have plenty participating in consultations. So the point is, it's not to reinvent IHL. IHL exists. It's valid, and it has proven to save lives. It's about making it an obligation, a reality, a political reality. So the states are going to gather together into 7 work streams co-chaired by some of the states, by a number of states. And basically they will look at 7 different work streams, from protection of civilians, from protecting medical missions, from naval warfare, from the role of cyber and ICT in warfare, and basically consult each other on their practices, on what they could do better to make sure that these rules that already exist are respected. So these consultations have already started. They've started in May, they have went on, there's been in November, there were a number of them holding place in all different parts of the world, in Indonesia, in Egypt, in Geneva, and so on. And at the end of 2026, all these practices and all these recommendations will be put together in one document that will be presented to all the states of the world as recommendations to be adopted to ensure that going forward we do not sink again in the dark ages that we saw in World War II and in the 20th century, but that there is a commitment at the political level, at the state leadership level, to uphold IHL and to make it a political priority.
We're continuing to see challenges in the continent, in particular in Sudan. We're also seeing in the DRC and also in the Sahel. What's some of the issues that you're most concerned about? We're seeing the adherence to international law. Still continue to see the challenges in that front as well. And engagement with those states and the agencies and the representative. it will be quite significant, isn't it?
I mean, when we talk about Sudan and when we talk about DRC, it's also very personal. I've worked there. I've had the chance to lead operations in those countries, and it is heartbreaking to see the reality that civilians are enduring in those contexts. Now, there is today the Washington Accords were signed yesterday, which hope that is an optimistic news for the region, for the Great Lakes region, that they can one day live without conflict and without having to fear that their house, their livelihoods, the hospitals are going to be damaged by parties and fighting a war. And so for us, it's really about ensuring that if IHL at all levels becomes an issue of compliance that is backed by all the states with interpretations that aim at preserving humanity. It's not an interpretation to allow you to commit the violation. It's an interpretation that needs to, at the end of the day, preserve humanity, so that if wars happen, they will not generate the kind of consequences that we are seeing today in Sudan, where we have over 10 million IDPs, the worst international displaced crisis in the world currently. Yeah. Or in DRC, that have seen 40 years of conflict and protracted consequences from that, when hospitals are not working and where you have patients that are showing up in hospitals where there's absolutely nothing in the stalls and they need to go to the next hospital hoping perhaps there they can get treatment.
Let's conclude quickly. Why is it important to support the work of ICRC, International Humanitarian?
The laws of war were invented to ensure that humanity would be preserved when humans decided to go to war. The ICRC was born out of these contexts in 1863, seeing the results on the battlefield and thinking there should be a neutral, independent, an impartial actor that would care for the wounded on the battlefield. From that idea, states gathered and said, we cannot sink below our humanity, and decided to write what eventually would become the Geneva Conventions. Today, with the increased amount of conflicts that we are seeing, with the increased amount of humanitarian consequences that they generate, with technology going ever faster into making wars something that are either more distant and more costly, we need to absolutely raise our voice. We need to speak for humanity, and we need to bring back that spirit that existed in 1945 at the end of World War II, when the world gathered, created the United Nations, and a couple of years later the Geneva Conventions was written to prevent humanity from repeating the mistakes of the past. And the ICRC has decided to launch this global initiative on IHL to remind states of that and to make it again a priority, lest we face again the same consequences that we saw in the 20th century.
Let me thank you so much for your time.
It's me to thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure.
This is Ubuntu Radio. Ubuntu Radio,
a product of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, South Africa.